Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Gaming with me, Tony Mo. And I have one simple question to ask all of you. How could you be here just sitting there watching me talk about a video game when there's someone out there to be blown up? That's right, ladies and gentlemen. We are doing my Junkrat guide for Overwatch. It was time that I revisited this and cleaned up the old guide. I thought that guy was kind of rubbish. It actually started getting a lot of views, and I was like, ooh, I'm not really proud of this. There's some mistakes in there and a lot of errors in terms of terminology, and it's just not really right because it was in the closed beta and now we're in the full release. So it's time to redo it because I made that video private, because although there was a bunch of you who are like, thanks so much, this helped a lot, I was like, God, that was terrible. So we're going to make it better today. We're going to make it more helpful, and we're also going to focus on playing an aggressive Junkrat, because that's the Junkrat that I like to play. It's a crazy, psychopathic, in the mix, aggressive Junkrat. One that often relies on his abilities, not just as attacking and defensive tools, but also as escape tools. He's a bit of a saboteur. And if you can get in the mix and have the symbiotic relationship with a Lucio or a Mercy or even a Zenyatta, this particular guide of playing Junkrat is going to make you one badass Junkrat on the battlefield. Alright, so let's start with why I love Junkrat so much. Honestly, I feel it's important that we actually talk about why I like to play certain heroes, why you might be here also agreeing with me as to why you would like to play Junkrat. Not only does Junkrat have probably one of the best personalities in the game, he's the one hero that just keeps my fingers busy. You know, you're always doing something, you're always deploying an ability, you're just on the fly, at least if you play him the way I do, and you know, he's one of the few heroes that gives me that sort of adrenaline-induced grin that I get from playing really high-speed competitive FPS, you know, things like Quake and Unreal Tournament. That's kind of how I feel when I play Junkrat. I know that sounds a bit silly, but I think it's just the mental connection of always doing something, like never stopping. Never stopping firing his grenades, then transitioning to the use of abilities, and back and forth. And that's really the theme of playing an aggressive Junkrat, is that you never stop laying down the damage, laying down the crowd control, whatever it is you're doing at that situation, you just keep doing it whenever it matters. So, that's the first place to start, obviously, the basic premise of using Junkrat. Now, he's tagged by Overwatch as a defensive hero, but I have to say he's the most offensive of the defensive heroes. Yes, he has all of those wonderful crowd control abilities, his grenades, a concussion mine, his steel trap, even his riptire are all generally designed around the idea of shutting down and putting the enemy team exactly where you want them. And I strongly recommend you make use of all those abilities for those exact reasons. Dump grenades in doorways to shut down certain paths and give the team access to fewer routes to flank you, or perhaps even to open up a certain pathway for your team to push through while they're trying to flank. And of course use all of his abilities to push the enemy team exactly where you want them. And we're going to talk about all of that in order, because we're going to go through his abilities, kind of break down how I use them, where I use them, and then we'll sort of close things out with a overview of the way that I play Junkrat and kind of some of the situations. We'll do a few examples along the way, and hopefully this will be a great format moving forward with my Overwatch hero guides. So let's start with Junkrat's grenade launcher. Obviously his primary weapon. This is one of the things I talk about when I say never stop shooting. Obviously you need to stop shooting at some point to deploy abilities and coordinate with your team, or maybe to use an ability as an escape tactic, but otherwise, you'll notice in all of my Junkrat gameplay, I never stop clicking the left mouse button. Just keep firing grenades. There are very few instances where there isn't some sort of an enemy presence in your line of sight. As long as they're there, and even if they're not there, frankly, just start putting grenades on target. His reload is super quick. There's no reason to not keep up a constant blanket of grenades. You never know who's going to walk into those grenades. And also, it pisses the enemy team off. You know, I can always tell when I'm playing against a good Junkrat, because it seems like we're always being rained on by billiard balls or whatever those things are. You know, there's just a constant flow of red grenades, and I'm like, where's this Junkrat? We need to find him because he's driving me crazy. That's a good Junkrat. Now, his grenade launcher, just kind of small bit of information for you guys who want to know a little bit more about it. The grenades themselves detonate after 3 bounces. That may or may not be helpful to you. Of course, you can pretty much put the grenades wherever you want because of the ability to ricochet them off walls. It's great for getting behind enemy defenses, such as Reinhardt's shield, for dumping them into smaller doorways or down staircases, for even just simply shooting them at the ground when trying to turn around and encounter an enemy that has been chasing you, such as a Tracer or a Reaper or a 76 or whoever is trying to get on your back and kill you. You know, you can put those grenades pretty much wherever you want them. You can do things like run through a doorway while shooting the grenades at the top of the doorway to hit the guy behind you chasing you. They are fantastic. And really, you know, there's another hero called Hanzo, and he's always talking about geometry, simple geometry, you know, like he knows exactly how to deflect his arrows. Let's be honest, the real master of geometry here is Junkrat and the bouncing of his grenades exactly where he wants them. Hanzo just fires an arrow with like tips on the end that go wherever the hell they want. That's not geometry. That's just an arrow with a split tip. Junkrat's the real master of geometry, and he would like to tell Hanzo to bite him. So, alright, let's get off his primary weapon. Obviously, that's something that's going to come with time. The more you use it, the better you'll be at putting those grenades exactly where you want them and seeing them detonate where you want them. Also, don't forget, quick little bit, that you can actually direct hit people with grenades, causing them to pretty much detonate instantaneously, doing immediate damage. This is great for dealing with those low HP, high mobility heroes like Tracer and Genji. It's also great for just getting high damage on tank heroes like Reinhardt and Zarya and so on and so forth. Now the next element, or the first proper element in Junkrat's toolbox, is his Concussion Mine. The Concussion Mine is sort of the multi-tool for Junkrat. Obviously, you can throw it on the ground, you can manually detonate it, meaning you can use it as a device to send Junkrat into the air, onto higher platforms. You can use it to clear big gaps that you wouldn't otherwise be able to clear. You can also use it as a mid-air double jump if you get really crazy. I do this from time to time. It was something I discovered accidentally, and then when I realized I could do it, I started doing it intentionally to get like additional hang time to fire down on people. Also, maybe to jump into a fight from a high location and then at the last second, knock myself back out of that fight or propel myself across a really large gap. It's not an easy thing to do, but if you can master it, you can spend a lot of time in the air, more time than you should probably be able to as a guy with a peg leg. But it's really awesome and it's really satisfying. Definitely something I consider checking out. Of course, you can also use that Concussion Mine against other players. It also does damage. You can knock people off of ledges, and this is definitely a big element of crowd control, is tossing those enemies exactly where you want them. You want to get a Zenyatta who just ulted out of the situation so your team can do damage to their tank? Throw a Concussion Mine down, send them flying in the air. You got a tank sitting on the objective like Reinhardt who just won't get away with that damn shield. Put a Concussion Mine right under his butt, blanket the ground with grenades, and let him land right back on top of them. The Concussion Mine is so good. And please, don't just constrain yourself to using it as a mine that you wait for someone to walk onto. Throw it at enemies. Act like it's C4 in Call of Duty. Run up to them, throw it in their face, and detonate it. Use it as a grenade to do additional damage to enemies. You wouldn't believe how many people's lives I've saved from rampaging Reinhardts on their charge ability by simply dumping a Concussion Mine in their face and then detonating it. It works in a lot of different situations. The more accustomed you come to using it in all of those situations, the more effective it will be to you as a Junkrat player. One more specific situation to consider for you guys. Whenever you're playing a lower HP hero, Roadhog is very often, you know, a threat. And I think it's very interesting that Roadhog and Junkrat have this sort of connection, right? And the fact that I would say Junkrat is probably the best hero when it comes to effectively countering a hook from Roadhog. So if Roadhog hooks you as Junkrat, here's the order of things that you want to do to escape from this situation. Number one, immediately throw a Concussion Mine and detonate it. As you're doing that, throw down a trap just as quickly as you can. That's going to get you away from him, do a little bit of damage, and allow you to deploy a steel trap so if he tries to push forward on you, he'll end up getting stuck. All the while, keep on clicking that left mouse button. You want to get those grenades off, and you can really turn it from a situation where you would have died from Roadhog's hook to a situation where he now just died because he brought death upon himself. That's how I like to look at it. And as a Roadhog player, it's something that I'm aware of. Depending on how good the Junkrat player is, I may or may not hook them because I've seen people use this strategy. I've since adopted it. And man, does it really work. It is a really great way to get away from Roadhog. And you can use this method really against any of the more tanky heroes that could most likely thrash you in a couple hits from close range. So even if we're talking Zarya, Reinhardt, D.Va, it doesn't matter. This is a great way to get away from them. You know, make that distance between yourselves, do damage, immobilize them, and then kill them. So keep that in mind. It's a great tool to use. It's a great combination of your Concussion Mine, your Steel Trap, basically all of your abilities bundled into one. So let's talk about that Steel Trap. Obviously a great tool for simply immobilizing heroes, and that's just about all it does. They can still use their abilities, they can still fire upon you, but it's going to allow you to put them stationary, which then gives you the opportunity to maybe direct hit them. This is good for dealing, again, with high mobility heroes like Genji or Tracer. It's also good for just doing large amounts of damage to tank heroes that find themselves stuck inside of your steel trap. It is a good tool for covering flanks. You know, it gives you that additional situational awareness because even if someone steps in it or if they destroy it, you will get a notification that the trap has been triggered. So you can use it to sort of cover flanks when your team is dealing maybe with a roaming Trace or a roaming, you know, Reaper, whatever the situation is at Genji. It's great for that situation, but don't just use it for that. I see a lot of people who get in the mix, you know, they're no longer covering a flank and they never using their steel trap. Man, throw that thing down in the middle of combat. All of Junkrat's abilities have really, really fast cooldowns. There's no reason to not constantly deploy them, just like his grenades. Throw down that steel trap, throw it right in the middle of the combat, watch a Reinhardt step on it, you know, watch a 76 step on it, then just wail on him with grenades. Throw a concussion mine right next to that thing, send them flying in the air. Just cause chaos. That's what an aggressive Junkrat is all about. Really, really genuinely getting into the mix, guys. Not just sitting back, shooting grenades from a distance, but being in there. Like some sort of a crazy multi-tool version of Junkrat, of Soldier 76, just constantly causing havoc, causing mayhem. That sort of flux, when you introduce that into a match, it puts the other team on edge. It gets them really frustrated, and it's a good way to really come out on top. And I would say that the matches where my team has really shut down the enemy team have been ones where I've been able to play Junkrat in this manner. You know, when you can really be in there as Junkrat, just constantly causing chaos, doing residual damage, doing large amounts of damage, getting kills, trapping people, dropping your ult on their face. This is when things go really, really well. So let's close it up by talking a little bit about the Riptire, which is Junkrat's ult. Just a few small tips and tricks about it. If those of you guys who don't know, it can climb walls, much like Genji and Hanzo's ability to climb walls. The Riptire can do the same thing. I talked a little bit just yesterday about Soldier 76's ult and how I feel it's important to surprise the enemy. And that really goes with any of the damage-based ults. You know, you want to make sure that the enemy only hears it coming, but doesn't see it coming. And that's the case with the Riptire. They're always going to know where it's coming from, so try and surprise them. Don't just drive through doorways whenever possible. Drop it off of ledges, jump it off of buildings. Do anything to make sure that that Riptire has the best possible chance of surviving, because it is so low HP, it can be taken down in a second and there goes your ult. And it obviously has insane damage potential, so get it into the mix. Go for those HVTs. It's not all about killing a large amount of enemies. Go for the tank. You'll notice in the gameplay that I posted in here, I killed Reinhardt like 3 times with it, just on his own. You know, that sometimes that's all it's about. Hunt down that Zenyatta that just ulted. You know, do whatever you can to go for those big HVT targets. Now, there are things that you should know about the Riptire. Obviously, if you drop it in front of Reinhardt's shield and explode it, his shield can absorb that impact, so you're going to want to try and get around that. Most of the other tanks are pretty defenseless. You know, surprise is always key because just about all of them can shred his Riptire very, very quickly. Zarya is really the big one you're going to have to worry about here when it comes to tanks. Her bubble ability can absorb all of the damage. You know, she doesn't really have like a damage fall off, like Reinhardt can lose his shield and then take damage. It doesn't matter. As long as her bubble is deployed, all of that damage will go away. She'll max out her boost on her weapon, and none of that damage will ever be directly added to her unless her shield dropped. So if her shield's up, the last thing you want to do is ult on it with the Riptire. Now, she can pop that thing really quickly if you have a good Zarya player, so it's really up to you. Do you want to take the risk? You know, I would do whatever you could in your power to pay attention to her ult cycle, or I'm sorry, her shield cycle. Know when she just shielded, and then drop the ult on her after that if you're trying to eliminate her as a tank. If she is a serious threat and you need to get her out, if she is that HVT, pay attention to her shield cycle, know when it's going cooldown, and then make use of your ult. That's the best tip I can give you with Zarya. There's few really great Zarya players out there right now, at least that I've dealt with, so chances are you won't have to deal with this too often, but keep it in mind in case the opportunity ever presents itself. Now, closing out here on Junkrat, guys, as I said, Overwatch, Blizzard likes to tag him as a defensive hero, but honestly, I think he's one of the best offensive heroes in the game if put into the right hands and used properly. He works in all of the game modes, whether it be Assault, Control, Hybrid, Escort the Payload, Assault or Defense, doesn't matter what size you're on, Junkrat can get into the mix, he can cause the chaos, he can get the kills, and he can help your team win. He's like one of the only heroes on the defensive roster that I don't get frustrated to see people using in a specific situation, because I'm always just like, yeah, I mean, if they've got the skills, that Junkrat can do as well right here. That's the thing about Junkrat. I think he works just about everywhere. If that's overpowered, call it what you want, he is just so versatile. It's all about the player when it comes to Junkrat. So hopefully, watching this guide has helped you become a better, aggressive Junkrat player. Hopefully I see you getting into the mix, causing some chaos, doing some crazy double jump, concussion mind jumps, across gaps, into the air, you know, pretending like you're Pharah, raining death from above, and in general, helping your team push to victory. If you have any questions for me regarding Junkrat, feel free to throw them down in the comments section below. Thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know what you think of this format for guides, and I will see you in the next one.